Are you ready to perform at your highest potential? Thank you for joining this GP Strategies webinar, where we'll explore best practices and innovative insights to help you and your organization improve performance.
To start things off, my name's Tim, on the team for partnerships and engagement. And some of you might have recognized my name from the emails that I've been sending you. I just want to say thank you very much for joining us this morning, for taking the time out to really invest in understanding what matters to your employees. Right, I'm happy to be your point of contact, and my details will be shared at the end of this webinar. So if you'd like to speak to someone at the end, please just feel free to reach out to me. If not, you've got my email in your inbox. Just some ground rules for this particular webinar. In fact, maybe I just won't share that screen, but this webinar is recorded just for your notice. And again, if you do have any questions or comments that you'd like to make as we go through the course of this webinar, please use the chat window. We're very happy to have you comment, happy to have you putting your feedback, sharing your thoughts and ideas, and make sure that you've got it set to everyone, not just the panelists, because we want to just make sure that we are sharing our ideas well. Lastly, it is an interactive webinar. We would appreciate your participation. The details to the Menti are down in the chat on the screen. Thank you so much, Ben. So scan the QR code with your phone or head on another window to menti.com and input the code. You should be ready to join us then. But without further ado, I just wanted to introduce Ben. Ben is our Senior Director for Learning Solutions for the APAC region. Ben is an amazing person, an amazing boss. He's also the Managing Director for countries in Australia, Singapore, Malaysia. So wealth of knowledge with Ben, amazing person. And I'm not going to steal any more of your time. Please, Ben, all yours.
Hi, Tim. Thank you for that effusive introduction. I think whether one is amazing is absolutely in the eye of the beholder. So, I'm sure I've got some critics out there, but I'm really, really happy to be here with you all today. I can see some familiar names in the chat and online. So welcome to everyone. In fact, just very quickly in the chat, just say hello and tell me where you are in the world. I'm going to say hello from Sydney. And make sure you're selecting reply to everyone. Okay, we got Susan coming in from Singapore. Hello, Susan. It feels like it's been a long time since we've connected, if this is the Susan Shao that I recall. Yeah, Elsa's coming in from Singapore. Hi, Elsa. Yeah, we really want to make sure this is interactive. Lovely to see you, Susan. We got Joel coming in from Lagos in Nigeria, which is, I don't know what the time is there, but it must be either very late or very early. Let's see, we got Jane. Oh, hi, Jane, coming in from Singapore. We got Sarah coming in from Sri Lanka. That's really great. We got Sissy coming in from Shanghai. Fantastic. We got Dongli coming in from Beijing. That's great. Welcome. So we got folks from all around. 4 a.m. in Nigeria. Joel, get some sleep, but you have sacrificed your time well, because this should be a valuable session. So guys, I'm going to jump in. We've used a little bit of minutes here and we've got a lot to get through. So look, I do look after some operational areas of GP strategies, but my vocation for many years, and for those of you who've worked with me knows that my focus has always been around leadership and employee engagement. And career is such a big part of that. And it's actually been an area of passion for me for the last 6 or 7 years, trying to help bridge some of the gaps, and so before I share more about myself and why we're here today to talk about this career research, I want to get us moving. And so I think you'll remember that we had this Mentimeter thing. So please make sure you've connected to Menti, because we're going to do our very first interaction right now, which is a conversation. I'd like you to type in. It can be 1 word, it can be 7 words, but to the general population, what sort of things trigger an association with career growth? If something has happened to me, this must be career growth. So that's what I'd like you to do. What does career growth look like to most people? Just type in your answers. You can type in more than one answer and they'll pop up on the screen here and we'll be able to see that. And I know I'm expecting more than a 1-word answer here, but feel free to do 1-word answers. I really want to hear from everyone on the call. What does career growth look like to most people? Okay, answer number 1 I got is promotion. Thank you so much. It's anonymous as well, so you can type anything you want without fear of judgment, not that we would be judging you. progression, fulfillment, individual development within an organization. Yeah, pay increase, learning. These are some good answers. I'll leave it a little bit longer. We've got 6 answers so far. Doing more of what fulfills me. I love that answer. Utilization of skills and also monetary growth. Challenging projects. Yeah, that's great. Advancement and increase in knowledge. I'll give it another second here, see if any other responses pop up. Increased role and responsibility. Recognition. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, look, I'm sure more answers will pop up, but if we put together, what career is made up of, I think we've got a pretty good map here on the page, right? But I will say that for a lot of people, true career progression and what we've seen in the research as well, especially in the Asia Pacific region, has promotion as a pretty big priority, right? For the average individual contributor out there, especially, we're going to see some of that. And that's a challenge, right? Because really what we're here to talk about today is this career research GP Strategies run. It's the first one we've ran since COVID. So this is our 2023 career perspectives. You'll be able to download the report. My team will be reaching out from different markets to offer, in-person meetings or virtual meetings to give you a physical or a soft copy of this report, which has, the global and APAC and AMEA data. So this is the actual report I'm just scanning through quickly here. But we wanted to present some of the key findings and some of the key challenges to you guys today. So keep an eye out and feel free to connect with our team on that, but we'll also be reaching out to offer that opportunity to deep dive into the report and the analysis associated with it. But the big thing we're really here to talk about is the paradoxical attitudes about career. And this has been one of the big shifts from the last time we ran career research, which is just 2 years before COVID. So we really found that that there has been some shifts. There's been some trends that have continued or gotten stronger, but this paradox, these conundrums have arisen. And a lot of that is due to the environment that we're operating in. This is a slide that I often show, but it's some data points around the state of jobs and skills in the global, work environment. We're in it. This is 2019, this specific data point from an EY report. 50% of jobs could see half of their activities automated by 2030. New skills and jobs will likely replace those lost through automation, digitization. So it's not like jobs are just disappearing. In many industries, new jobs will emerge on the back of these disruptions. The types of skills that we need to thrive will change. In fact, hours spent in soft skills, leadership, social, creative thinking skills, problem-solving skills is going to increase a lot because more process-driven tasks are likely to be affected by digitization and automation. So they're going to be the second highest focus next to coding and programming. But even we've seen with AI, generative AI, how that's impacting programming and coding really rapidly. The half-life, so meaning how long a skill is relevant in the marketplace, has dropped from 15 years just 20 years ago to 5 years today. So the speed at which we need to pick up new skills is changing. And there's going to, because of this speed of new skills emerging, universities and schools and businesses can't produce enough talent with these skills. And so where does this leave us? It leaves us in a situation where this is the battle I'm trying to help fight and my team are trying to fight, is where organizations are can't afford to lose people. We need to keep people. And because I can't find the talent for some of these skills out there in the marketplace, I need to develop that talent in-house. I need to cultivate those skills. And so this is the nature of the world we're trying to have careers in. And before, I think, maybe 20 years ago or 15 years ago, career was like this, it was this thing that was a side conversation. A lot of companies didn't even have career structures in their businesses, and the importance has increased. But now it's not just important, it's urgent. And, you throw that in with some other winds of change, right? We've just had a pandemic, which has created this great resignation, which is apparently winding down the whole work from home dynamic, the battle between traditional and whatever the new work world is like, changes in demographics and generational shifts in attitudes. And I already mentioned about disruption. So this is the world we're in. And this is the world in which the research is being conducted. So the data, just to give you a bit of background, the data for this report included was gathered in late 2023. We got information from both individual contributors and people managers to make sure we were getting the perspective of career at different levels of hierarchy within a business. Hint, hint, that proved to be a very valuable decision for APAC especially, because there is, unlike the rest of the world, some pretty big divides there, and we'll talk about that later. It is global representation, so we had significant responses from Australia, Singapore, China, Thailand. We had a whole lot, India. We had a whole bunch of responses from Asia, and then of course AMEA and the Americas. And like I said, it's a continuation on research that we refresh. COVID slowed down that refresh a little bit. Typically, we refresh the research every 3 to 5 years. And so what we found in the results is, a number of riddles, challenges, conflicting issues, problems, issues, contradictions, inconsistencies. And really, we put that down to, paradoxes. A paradox is a statement or a proposition that seems self-contradictory or absurd, but in reality exposes a possible truth. And that's kind of what we saw. And so really, there are 4 main kind of paradoxes that emerged out of the research. And they're really the agenda for today. Paradox 1 is, I'm more engaged in my current job when I'm talking about my next job or what's next for me in the future, what's coming in the future. 2, Paradox 2, values and strengths are important to my current job, while financial reward is important for my next job. So, and we actually did get some additional data through interviews as a follow-up that currently with inflation and some disruption, we're in a weird economic environment right now, that is driving a lot of that increase in financial focus, which wasn't present in the prior research, or at least the last couple of research rounds. Paradox 3, ask me what I want often and tell me what the organization wants. And paradox 4, my current priorities prevent me from prioritizing my development. So we're going to break these down in a little bit more detail. So let's jump in for paradox 1. I'm more engaged in my current job when talking about my next job and future. And to get this started, I want to do another little Menti here. So I'm going to pivot over to Menti. I'm going to go to the next question. Career development has been a priority in this past year. And I'd like you to think about this from an individual level or a company level, right? So do you strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree with that statement? So we're seeing some responses come in. So far, after 11 responses, we're in that strongly agree area. We've got a disagree. I'll just put that data up for a little bit longer. I think we can see the trend. And actually, what I'm just seeing in this little micro, statistically insignificant little poll I'm doing right here is similar to the results that we had. That generally speaking, career development has been a priority this past year for individuals and for managers. We didn't really ask at an organizational strategic level, but I can say in terms of our engagements with our clients, it's a hugely increasing priority and has been not just through COVID, but prior to COVID. And I think that's driven through some of that data I shared of disruption and change. So yeah, so this is what we're seeing in our data. And generally what we found is that career is important to me. In fact, an aggregate of 75% of responses said that they agree or strongly agree that career has been very important to them. And an aggregate of 81% have said that career has some level or greatly supports my engagement. And, we define engagement as the intersection of my ability to contribute to a role and my ability to feel good about my contribution. So it helps me and it helps the company when those two things are happening. That is engagement, right? And that awareness of career is a big driver of that. And what's, further interesting, what does that career growth look like? And so I think the interesting thing here is, I don't think there's anything wrong with staying in the same job if I can try new things or develop my skills. So globally, we found that 84% of respondents, both managers and individuals globally, either strongly agreed or agreed with this sentiment. Which means, at the top, we had a couple of people put in promotion, right? And you'll see some data from APAC talking about promotion. We have the great resignation or the quiet quitting or whatever we're calling it now. But generally speaking, this is in line with data from prior years that people just need to see growth, and that doesn't necessarily mean promotion. It doesn't even necessarily mean role switch, right? And so that's positive. That's good news for us as either L&D professionals or individuals out there trying to be strategic about how we're tackling career. And the great news is this was also true in APAC specific data, and I'm going to zero into APAC specific data in a moment. So the implications of this is that career development does increase engagement, and more conversations will therefore increase engagement. So career development conversations don't need to be just a one-way ticket to a promotion or an exit from the business. I've had some organizations in the last few months that were working with me just be honest with me and tell me that their fear is if they go out and have career conversations and they can't offer a promotion, then those conversations may lead to an exit, right? And it is true that could happen, right? But that paralysis through fear of losing people is then inhibiting organizations' ability to take advantage of the importance of career. Because remember, people are happy to grow in their current role as long as they see it as aligned to their values and their interests. Career development conversations aren't just about promotions. I've just said that. And the importance of those career development conversations is they establish a mutual partnership between managers and team members. It shows engaging in conversations. It shows your people that you value them, that you want them to grow, and that you're invested in their future. It doesn't mean I have a promotion or I don't have a promotion to offer you, and that is the determining factor as to whether or not I have a career conversation, right? We need to be taking advantage of development and career in the day-to-day practice of our management. And what that requires is a shift, a redefinition of career. And we're going to talk about that later. If your managers and individuals are out there and they're thinking promotion is career, financial recognition is career, then that is going to inhibit their ability to have career conversations, because why would you have them if you can't offer those two things? So broadening our definitions of career across our businesses en masse is important. Let's go to our next Menti poll. Let me just bring that up. What is most important for you and your manager? So this is, remember, even though I know for a fact I've got some senior leaders on this call right now, I'd like you to answer from your perspective, because you are an individual in your career. You probably have a manager as well. What is most important for you and your manager to get on the same page about? My values, strengths, and how I can do more that satisfies them, my previous experience in roles, my level of compensation and how I can increase it, my position, and when I will get promoted. Go ahead and this is a ranking activity, so you can rank them in order of most important to least important. We've got a couple of responses. Only 4 though. I think I got to wait a bit longer. That's not quite enough. So what is most important for you and your manager to get on the same page about? Now, this will vary. If you've got a new manager, some of this may change. If you're in an intact team and an intact relationship with your manager, this may be a little bit different. So there is a situational dimension to this. Yeah, so a good amount of responses coming in now. But generally speaking, we're seeing that my values and strengths are kind of coming in first and compensation coming in second. And this is actually really, really true of the data we have right now. And this is where one of the shifts have occurred, where in prior years, pre-COVID, back in 2018 and 2019 with our last career research, my compensation was actually third or fourth, depending on which market you're in. And some other intrinsic elements. So what we have seen, one of the paradoxes is a little bit of a shift from intrinsic drivers to extrinsic drivers. And we see extrinsic drivers becoming a priority when people feel like their intrinsic drivers are not being met. So when I feel like I'm nervous about my life, maybe my life situation has changed, I'm worried about making ends meet, that's going to drive an extrinsic focus towards financial rewards. right? Maybe if I see that I'm nervous about my job and my job sustainability, that could also drive it, right? If I'm not clear on my direction, right? Or what opportunities I have, then I'm going to start to look extrinsically, right? And we have seen a bit more of an increase in that. So I'm going to pivot back over. Thank you for participating in the poll. So what matters when you talk about career? What's most important to you? And this is what the global research suggested. So 61% were values. So I think that's kind of pretty aligned to what we had on our call today. And we had a tie to my previous work experience and my level of compensation and when I will get promoted. Right. So here is where a conundrum starts to arise, right? Or a paradox. For a lot of managers and individuals out there, especially managers, their view, the everyday manager, the hundreds or thousands of people leaders who are across your business right now, they tend to avoid career conversations because they feel like if I don't have a promotion or some sort of big jump for them, I don't really feel like there's something I can talk about. But in fact, what really matters is my strengths and values, and I want to align that. And so a career conversation might end up being more about aligning on values and strengths, right? Maybe we need to broaden the definition of what is a career conversation and what should be included in that. Because again, our concerns and fears of what career used to be is driving our inaction and our ability to take advantage of what the data is telling us. The data is telling us there's opportunities here, that people are prepared to have to talk about things more than just promotion and financial increase. But on the other hand, we're nervous to have these conversations. So there's opportunities in these paradoxes that we're talking about here. And really, I guess what I want to kind of talk about is the X model. So some of you who've worked with this over the years will know the X model of engagement. I'm going to do it very, very quickly, but effectively, the X model of engagement posits that there's two paths, right? There's the organization's path, right? And your organization is hopefully heading towards success defined by the organization's values, goals, strategy, mission, vision. And what every organization wants from its people is maximum contribution towards that definition of success, wherever you are in the business. But intersecting with that, either tens, hundreds, thousands of times, is every single individual in your company. And every single individual has their own unique individual definition of their own success, their own values, their own goals, their own strategy to get there. Some individuals don't even know what that is, especially earlier in their career. They've not really thought about their values. They've not really got clarity on their goals yet. But whether it's happening consciously or not, this is intersecting. These two paths are intersecting and creating the job that you're navigating every day. And every day you're either varying degrees of maximum satisfaction, varying degrees of maximum contribution. And what we really want is to be at the top as many days as possible, feeling maximum satisfaction towards my own definition of success and maximum contribution towards the company's definition of success. It's not realistic to be there every day, but if I can just find a way to spend 1, 2, 5, 10 more days a year in there, then the company gets better results. There's better performance, higher discretionary effort is what you get out of people in the engaged zone. But the only way to get there is a partnership between the business and the individual. And in the average, frontline manager and individual contributor relationship, the manager is the voice of the business. They represent the business. And so, a career conversation needs to involve us empowering individuals to understand their definitions of success, empowering managers to broaden their horizon of what engagement is, of what career is. I'm equipping them with abilities to have conversations, but then driving a conversation to bridge those two things together. Because the more a manager knows about an individual's definition of success, then I am able to better achieve this. If I understand my team members' values, my team members' strengths, and how and be able to connect the work, then when I delegate, all of a sudden, now I'm saying, hey, Susan, I know that you have this as a goal, or I know that this is one of your strengths and you really enjoy doing this work. So here is this task that I'd love for you to jump on, right? Now that delegation, instead of being just laying another brick in the wall, another box ticking exercise, it becomes career development, right? And so I mean, in my world, in our world, your first and most important career conversation is a partnership alignment conversation, not even about jobs and promotions and next steps. It's just about who am I and how can I get more of what I need in this job today. That is what a really powerful career conversation is. But the number of those conversations happening, and to be honest, the support to make them happen successfully just isn't there in many organizations. And so that's really what we want to get to. And so I want to give you guys a model to think about this, right? And that model is the identity model, right? And so every day, our identity or the individual path of the X, right? All of us are driven by our identity. And our identity is made up of our values, what matters to you, our strengths, what are you good at, our interests, what do you enjoy doing, and our goals, where do you want to go? A lot of our initiatives, often we start with a client saying to us, hey, we want to train our managers. We want to create some career development pathway for our managers. And we want the managers to engage with individuals. But what we find actually is a more successful pathway is to actually engage the individuals, partly because individuals are motivated about their own careers more than the manager is. So they're more likely to drive the conversation. But on the other side, it's unfair to ask the manager to go and have these conversations if the individual hasn't been equipped with the ability to know their own identity. And this applies for managers all throughout the organization. A senior managing director or an executive also needs to know their own identity and be able to have good conversations with their people around that as well. So the identity model is really central. And so if this is so important, where are there some gaps? In a career conversations program that we run, this is just like a half day live or like a 2 or 3 hour virtual session. One of the activities we do is we get managers to write down their team members' names. John, Bill, Frank, Eway, whatever their names are. And then they get to just do a quick ranking of how high, medium, low, how well do you know your team members' values, strengths, interests, and goals? So just tell me in the chat, which of these, if you were to just quickly think about this for your own teams, which of these do you think you would be most likely to know best? Or which of these would the average manager know best? Values, strengths, interests, or goals? And which of these do you think a manager would most likely to know least? Yeah, Elsa said strengths, 100% strengths. Yeah, strengths are somewhat obvious because you see them delivering them every day. Interests as well. Strengths and goals from Tim, strengths and interests from Jane. What I would say, and I saw few people say values, I would actually disagree with that. We think we know our people's values, but often we can make assumptions about that, right? Because, we have a process called values clarification that has 7 steps to just get an individual to land on what their true values are. Because a lot of us walk around with values that are actually values of our parents or societal values that we think we should demonstrate, but are actually a means to an end. They're not our core values. So it can be a very complex piece to get to, right? And so whenever I do this activity, I never, ever, 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 not once in the last 15 years of doing similar activities, have I had a manager give hi to all their team members and to all elements of an identity. Never. And so if that's a fact of life, that we're not going to know strengths, values, and interests, but yet we know that, people are more prepared to stay in their job if work can be aligned to their values and their strengths and work that satisfies them, there is a paradox. There is a gap there that we can solve, right? And the key is to equip individuals to know their identity, but also to equip managers with the redefinition of a career conversation might just be about knowing your team members' identity better. A career conversation might just be delegating or goal setting or coaching in a way that is aligned to that team member's identity. I am happier in my role when I feel like I'm getting work that is aligned to that. So, and I've got a question coming in. However, I would be curious to know whether even knowing values could be culturally driven. So what I will say to that, and I was based in China for about 8 years and Singapore. So I have lived in different markets as well as in Australia and the US and Thailand. And I will say that what you can find is there is a strong like foundational layer of societal expectations. So yeah, maybe some cultures are more less direct, less communicative, but everyone has their values, right? And sometimes societal values can make it hard for people to get to their true core values. But yes, cultures do influence it. It is true. So I think that's a really good question. So that's really an opportunity for us, right? Is to really to get there. But now I want to zoom into APAC data, right? There's actually lots of differences in the APAC data, and I've tried to distill large sections of it into this one slide. Uniquely APAC, I'm calling it, right? Is this a warning for APAC? So here is what we've had. And I'm going to ask you to tell me in the chat, what do you think's behind it? So I've conducted some interviews, as well as used data that I have from engagements with some banks, manufacturing companies, power generation companies, automotive companies, retail organizations, luxury brands, right? On what I believe is driving this, but I'm going to hear from you first. So here is the first part of it. People leaders in Asia Pacific had the highest scores globally in terms of career being a priority, in terms of career being a driver of their engagement, and in terms of the way they perceive the importance of their values in their career. So by a significant margin, right? By a statistically significant margin. For example, career being a priority, the average for people leaders was 81%. People managers in Asia were 88%, right? Isn't that interesting? And now I'm going to put down the bottom here what individuals in APAC have said. And when I took Australia out, which maybe might be a cultural anomaly in compared to, say, maybe like China or Singapore or Japan, Korea, Thailand, right? The data got even stronger. Individuals found that career development impacts engagement to a lesser degree than everyone else in the world. And it's the only segment in all of the global research that prioritized promotion over the other pieces. And on top of that, they had less of a focus. It was still a priority for them, but the score was statistically lower than on the importance of values and strengths, as well as the least likely to take advantage of career development opportunities. So what's up with that? If I turn this into an equation, right, and I'm going to do like the people leaders divided by the individual contributors, what does that equal? So, this is a complex thing, and it's actually one of the things we want to talk about to our network when we go out and have these one-on-one meetings, because this is a deeper conversation, and I don't have time to get into the details, but can anyone give me a few words in the chat on, what is your perception of what could be driving this, what I would deem as a less empowered, engaged individual contributor population around career and a higher engaged people leader population around career? What are your thoughts? Tell me in the chat. I'm not expecting, this really is an essay response, but have a go and tell me what you think. So while you're typing your responses, I will say that still the trend for individuals was the data that we shared, around still, values and strengths was their number one thing. It was, but the shift was quite different. So we've got stability, a desire for stability, culture, competition. In my work, I found that team members found this conversation stressful, right? Yeah, power distance. So there could be like a hierarchical power distance. Yeah, generational things that we're trying to deal with, status quo. Yeah, so some interesting ideas. I'm going to, at a very high level, share my take, because we are engaging managers and individuals around career and also helping organizations with their learning strategy. Yeah, equating promotion with recognition. Yeah, so what I found is the way that organizations traditionally in APAC have structured their organizations is that, hierarchy really matters a lot. And what we hear from individual contributors when we interview them is that they do not feel like they're empowered. Their manager holds all the cards on their career, right? So when you become a manager, all of a sudden, in some companies across APAC, right, all of a sudden your career has really started, right? Like now I've got my promotion. Now I'm kind of there. Now I'm invested. I'm a top talent. I see a lot of talent programs that invest in managers, but as an individual, I might be 7 years, 10 years as an individual with very little development, right? And so my take on it is and also this is like on interviews that I've conducted, that individuals kind of feel a bit less empowered because of the hierarchical nature. I know things are changing, but hierarchical nature of organizations. And on top of that, the fact that, that the culture in APAC has been more around promotion as a career mechanism than perhaps some other markets, right? So that's a shifting piece of the landscape, but still one that's there. So I've got a few perceptions on it as well as some data to back some of that up, but I'm seeing some more elements in the chat. Yeah, there could be a generational push here. I definitely think it's easy to say like millennials and zennials are a bit more demanding, right? A bit more higher expectation of like, 2 years, I'm ready to go up. I'm ready to go up. I definitely see that in my own organization. But I do think there's some historical factors that are driving this. And a lot of it's around that hierarchical top-down nature of our organizations and the way that we have prioritized career development within our own organizations, training opportunities. Some of the organizations we work with have been really investing in the individuals, but many organizations out there don't. Outside of onboarding, technical and compliance training, I don't get that much development until I become a manager or I'm identified as a hypo. So if that's kind of the world that I'm in and my managers maybe aren't that equipped to, and their view is of promotion as the only mechanism of career development, then I'm not surprised to see this data. It's just not as much of an issue in some other markets, right? And so this is something to really take away for all of us, because many of you on this call, either you or your counterparts or some other department in your organization, are trying to respond in your own ways to this stuff that I brought up earlier, to the need to reskill a workforce, the need to upskill a workforce, to digital disruption, to generational changes. You're trying to respond to that. You're trying to create a workforce that's more accountable for their own growth, where individuals are more invested in their own career. You're trying to deploy technologies, AI-driven career development platforms and all of this stuff. But if individuals are currently thinking in this way, for me, there's a motivation and a definition gap in our individual population that's going to limit their utilization of whatever we try to do. We've got to change their mindset. We've got to move them to a different place around career and their managers in order to make all the other stuff we're trying to do work. If I feel like it's only promotion, if I feel like I'm not empowered, then all that other stuff is going to be hard to take hold. So for me, it connects to that wider push towards empowering and making our employees accountable for their careers. Right? This is a gap in mindset. So paradox 3, and thank you for all your sharing, by the way, in the chat. Ask me what I want often and tell me what the organization wants. So this data here is around the frequency of conversations. And so generally we found that, I'm just moving my chat out of the way. We found that this was pretty consistent across the global report, that people wanted regular conversations. Again, APAC people leaders were the strongest in terms of wanting it like monthly and quarterly. But generally speaking, monthly and quarterly were the highest responses, 66% between them. So, this is just a question for your team, for your organization, for your managers. How frequently are these conversations happening? And if they're not happening at a desired frequency, are we doing it the right way? Who's accountable for that? Again, it comes back to that gap there. If I feel a little bit disempowered about career, I feel like my only option is promotion, and I know that there aren't many promotions. Am I going to be interested in having career conversations as an individual or as a people manager, right? And so I think that feeds into, what we need to do to increase the frequency of conversations. Our data is that while people might want them monthly and quarterly, that career conversations for the average manager, there are great leaders out there, occur once or twice a year, or sometimes not at all, right? That's the general data that we've seen, and that the quality of those conversations tend to be an extension of a performance review rather than a neutral, open conversation of what's possible, right? And there's a lot behind that: skills, knowledge, awareness. There's a lot to tackle that, but the current frequency of career conversations isn't where people would like it to be. So what does this look like? 96% of the people surveyed said they wanted the leader to play some role in their career development, right? Help connect. If you don't have opportunities, manager, can you connect me with opportunities? Tell me more about what I can do. Tell me more, spend more time speaking to me about what the organization needs from me. What's our purpose? How do I get there? What else can I do? And yes, compensation has shot up the charts right now in this 2022, 2023 data collection period as something. Before this was in our prior research was way, way, way down compared to where it is now. It's in the top 3. So yeah, and I think Jane, you've mentioned and a couple of people mentioned the generational divide. That could be a driver, but I also think it's a symptom of our economic climate and the fact that there's a talent war out there. You can earn a lot of money now, and people are aware of that. GP has a lot of talented people. We're constantly having our talent poached by, a Google who wants an expert in modern learning design or a micro, and people are able to pay a lot for roles these days, so it's a weird environment, economically difficult, but high paid if you've got the right skills, and so I think that's driving a lot of what's behind this enhanced compensation. So it is something to be aware of. So paradox 4. My current priorities prevent me from prioritizing my development. If your organization offered professional development opportunities to you, would you be likely to take advantage of them? So generally speaking, 74% of people very likely. This is the score I was most concerned about for APAC, because this is the score where individual contributors in APAC, while still saying likely, very likely, they were significantly lower, and you can see that data in our full printed report, were significantly lower than the global. Significantly lower than people leaders, significantly lower than individuals in other markets. In APAC, individuals were much lower. And this is, for me, that disempowerment and that they've got a thinking block. It's just more work for me, right? It's not, I need my promotion, and so that's a gap there, which for me goes against that push that I'm seeing around a more accountable and curious workforce. But the big factors behind it, honestly, were time and competing priorities. I'm not being given enough time for it. And, my performance and achieving my KPIs is a greater priority. And again, this was a stronger push. This was a stronger inference from individual contributors in APAC. And I think that's true of a lot of organizations you work for, that this is kind of one of the challenges, leaner workforces with a still strong emphasis on KPIs. So one of the last data points before we start to wrap up and go into paradox 4, and I just saw another chat come in. I want to make sure I'm capturing those. So Ritika said, could it also be they feel they're overworked and overwhelmed already? Yeah, so that's what I was referring to, and you may have said that just before around, that some organizations have had throughout COVID has had to make leaner workforces. So you may be doing a lot more with less. 100% that could be a driver. But some of that speculation, a lot of what I'm speculating on is based on the data and information I capture from my clients and our clients in the region to try to add extra meaning into it. But yes, 100% that could be a part of it. Employees are spending some time on their development. So percent of employees who say they're spending the right amount of time on their development, 43% of all employees, so that's an average. 38%, so individual contributors are way lower than people managers in terms of feeling like they're spending time on their development. What I would say here again, people leaders in APAC were much higher and individual contributors in APAC were lower. So the divide was much greater between people leaders in the way they saw their motivation and spending their time allocation for career development compared to individuals. This is a problem we need to solve. It's a gap that we need to close. So solving this, I think, is probably one of the bigger pieces, right? Because it speaks to the overall organization strategy, creating a culture of career development, or a culture of development, sorry. I would say taking the word career out is probably a very good idea, right? That it's just about growth and development, the urgency to develop and grow, the need for sustainability in your career to do the disruption and change can be things that can help to wake people up and make them realize, you know what, this is an important priority for me, both as a manager and a people manager. Clear hurdles for formal development. So some of those hurdles could involve the skills of managers. Like I said, the definition, the box, the lens through which managers are viewing development, that has to to change. But then also you've got your more formal development areas, opportunities such as, job switches and shadowing and promotions and all of that stuff is there. So how smooth is that? How obvious is that to people? How available and searchable and accessible is it to the average employee? These are very big conversations here. And yeah, you got to talk to your people. This is the data we've captured. It would be interesting to know what is the data from your exact population. What are people saying, the individuals out there saying about their career development? Are they being upfront and transparent with their managers and the business about it? And so we have these 4 paradoxes. And really, for me, there's a couple of outcomes, right? So paradox number 1, the outcome is feeling like I'm going somewhere and not necessarily up has never been more important, right? Even if I'm not necessarily getting promoted, people want to feel like they're progressing, right? And that could just be a new skill to develop or developing in a way that's going to get them towards a new role or a new skill set to solve a new problem that's emerging in your organization. Outcome 2, focusing on identity, value, strengths, interests, and goals can help retain key talent in the face of economic uncertainty. So what I'm getting at there is if everyone out there in your business is sitting there thinking promotions and pay rise, yes, they are important, but still values, strengths, the concept of identity is more important, including in APAC. And so helping people understand their identities and have conversations about that and be able to link daily performance and management to identity is your first port of call to retaining your talent. Paradox 3, ask me what I want often and tell me what the organization wants. Managers and individuals must first be empowered to have those regular, meaningful conversations. If they don't get it, if they have the wrong definitions, if they're afraid of it, I saw fear come up a couple of times in the chat, right? Then these conversations won't occur. We need to remember that they're not just about performance. They're not just about promotion. These are just about partnership and about connection. And we have to empower our managers and individuals to have that. Paradox 4's outcome is, if you can't hear me wrapping this over their head many times, definitions and mindsets on career must change. So we've got to help people grow, help focus on identity. We've got to empower people, and we've got to change mindsets. That's the big thing here, because we can't give everyone a pay rise. We can't give everyone a promotion, but yet we have to create a curious, agile culture of career development and professional development in order to meet these challenges head on, right? These disruption changes, these cultural changes, these generational challenges. We have no choice if we're going to be successful as an organization in keeping our people and thriving. So just to finish on on one last point, some of the people on this call have already heard about this. And I'm going to look, I'm seeing some comments come in. I will look at those in a moment. This has been a pet project of mine. We've actually developed a program called CareerNOW, which is really geared around solving a part of this challenge. The data that came through really just supported. We started developing this actually some time ago. We've had some organizations in Singapore specifically run different versions of this, but we created this program CareerNOW to really get out there en masse in an impactful way and redefine career, to create an empowerment, to create career conversations and build partnerships between managers and people. Just the things that I've been talking about throughout this process. And it's a social experience that is primarily online. So it's something that our goal is, because we know career is not just the few, it's the many, that we wanted to create something that many people could access, that we could reach hundreds or if not thousands of individuals and managers. Remember, this is not everyone is in a career, not just individual contributors, right? So how can we get everyone to understand their identity en masse? How can we create connections and networks across our organization en masse? How can we get people to experience a type of learning? How can we get people to experience a type of learning that cultivates curiosity and agile learning behaviors, right? The design of this program is kind of settled in a modern learning and an agile learning approach. So we had a lot of boxes, and we're running a public session of it, open to L&D people, if they want to sign up and do it for themselves, or if they want to send, we have a lot of our smaller customers who maybe can't run these. They've only got 10 people that they want to send, that they could send, but opening this up also to give access to smaller organizations who can't run these en masse, right? But basically, public session, it's global. There'll be people from America, Europe, all across Asia participating in this, and it's launching on September 15. And so, Tim and David and folks in your respective markets from GP Strategies, there's opportunities to get seats on it, and there's a process for it. You'll see some communications coming out very, very soon. But just to give you a high level of the journey, right? There's a launch, there's a pre-work where I get to assess future skills and current skills. I get to assess my own values. I get feedback from, someone who knows me very well, a partner, a brother, a sister, a mother, or someone who might know me very well. I get feedback from my manager, and it's not feedback around, it's not a performance review. The managers are just assessing what the manager's point of view is on a set of current and future skills today, how important they see these today, and how important they see these skills tomorrow, right? And so they get this perspective around skills and values from all sorts of different sources. And then they go through this spaced social journey, right? We space it out over time so people can do it around their busy schedules, right? It's only an hour to 90 minutes on 1 week per week of total activity, filled with lots of little micro interactions. I can jump in and do a bit on Monday, a bit on Tuesday, and it's a very light lift. So, this is where I get welcome to Career Now. I understand the program. Week 2 launches. It's why career, why now. All right. So this is the urgency around career. This is about redefining what I need to, how I need to take ownership of my career. I get to assess my identity. This is where I look at my data from my values assessment, and I start to look at my strengths. Do I have a growth mindset? Have I got the right mindset to really take advantage? Then I start to build a network, because most opportunities in our career don't come from our manager. They come from the wider community. And for the record, managers need to create a community to help themselves, but also a community to help create opportunities for their people. So that's what that one's about. Becoming more adaptable. So, a piece around looking ahead and kind of plan for disruption and change that might be coming my way. And then the big one is what it's building towards is building a partnership. So this is where I take everything that I've done on these prior weeks and I prepare to have a conversation with my manager, a partnership conversation about all of this stuff, helping them understand my identity, helping me understand more about my manager's stresses and priorities, right? And so it's just a really cool conversation, non-confrontational, that just gets managers and team members moving in the same direction. There's an extra week just to wrap up and set goals. And then, of course, we want them to continue to develop. So that's coming up here. It's even though it's an online social experience, there are live virtual sessions that occur at the beginning and at the end that I'll be facilitating. I won't be doing that for a lot of our client runs, but I'll be doing that for this one. And there's a live moderator and expert participating with people on the platform, responding to questions and engaging in the social discussions and all of those things that are occurring throughout. And remember, it's just a small amount of time per week. So, we'd love for people to sign up, speak to, your respective contact at GP. You can register your interest right now. We've got all sorts of ways to help make this accessible. We really want this to be almost a valuable service to the corporate community of Asia Pacific or to the globe, to try to, reach so many people and start to move the needle on these redefinition of career. So register your interest, tell us in the chat, or just send us an email, and you'll hear more about it over the coming weeks and months. So a few things have come up in the chat. We're in our last couple of minutes. Some pretty long responses. Let's see here. So a request, first of all, to do it in more India and respectful time zones. We can definitely do that. There was another version of this for the US-based one. And so we definitely do have 2 time slots, one for North America, Europe, and one for Asia, but that can be in some pretty uncomfortable times. But we'll certainly take that feedback on board. Thank you for that. But are there any other questions you guys have? You can tell me in the chat. I'll hang around for a little bit. But otherwise, thank you for your time. We'd really love to get in and meet with you guys and run through the report in more detail, answer your direct questions, have a more thorough conversation about it. And you can download the research yourself online as well. So thank you. And yeah, feel free to stick some questions in the chat and we'll be happy to try to answer them. Tim, is there anything you want to say to wrap up? Go ahead.
I did. Thank you very much, Ben, and thanks so much for sharing. Joel, I see in the question in the chat, could we get access to the presentation? Of course, I'll be happy to follow up with you right after this webinar. I do see someone else in the chat, Timothy Lim. That's not me, actually. I did send out a join link so that others could attend more conveniently. So, yep, if you have any questions, thank you very much for attending as well. I'm just going to share my screen very quickly. And that's my contact details. Of course, if you have any further questions that you can't make the time for right now, please, you can scan the QR code, schedule a meeting with me. I'll be happy to speak through CareerNOW, happy to speak through the research report, to go into nuances of it. But I think Ben summed that up pretty well today.
Yeah.
Of course, my email and my contact is on the slides. So please feel free to take it down, drop me an email. I'm happy to connect.
And Timothy, sorry, I thought it was you, Tim. It's just very random to have a Timothy Lim. So Timothy, you did mention about the labels. We totally agree, right? That, for the purposes of research, we try to segment in that way, but people don't need to have leadership careers to have a career. There's highly specialized pathways. Our philosophy on leadership is that it's situational and relational. Sometimes I need to follow you. Sometimes you need to follow me, so it is shifting a lot. And also, especially as it relates to career, I think it's more about just looking at yourself as an individual, whether you're the CEO of a company or a new university graduate, that really the most important label in one's career is just who am I and where am I in my career. You have to throw in this dynamic of the manager, of course, as well, who is a player in that, right? But yes, the labels, I think, can muddy the waters a little bit, and I thought that was a great reflection. I'm sorry I didn't respond to that sooner.
Please feel free to keep your questions coming in. If not, the time now is 12 noon. If you've got a meeting to run for, if you've got a lunch to run for, please feel free to make your time for it. We really appreciate you joining us, and we look forward to having you perhaps with CareerNOW. So I'll get in touch with you. Awesome to have you. Thanks, Jane. Thanks, Ritika.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Rio. Thanks, Susan. Lovely to reconnect. Thanks very much.
This webinar was brought to you by GP Strategies. Together, we help organizations transform through their people. You can access more webinars or download additional resources by visiting the GP Strategies Resource Library. The link is on your screen and in the description.